My face numb from the wind, I slipped and slid our way through the snow, focused on what looked like a hand, all the while mentally denying it was one. As we drew near, Bun started to quiver, a clear sign of his excitement. Bun always likes to be right, especially under these circumstances. I came to a stop and leaned forward. The hand, a real hand, was connected to the arm of a man lying amid grasses that arched tunnel-like over his lower extremities. He seemed to reach out, maybe in hope that someone would take hold of his hand and lift him off the ground. I trembled and then shook, before pacing back and forth while I muttered that this must have been an accident. I pulled my cell phone from the pocket of my jacket and dialed 911. A female dispatcher answered the call and listened as I babbled on about my find and where it was located. Finally, she asked, "Are you still at that location, ma'am?" "Yes." "Stay there. Emergency services will be with you shortly. Please remain on the line until they arrive." Her voice, calm and soothing, left me less frantic, and I stopped pacing. I detest murder, or violence of any kind, though I admit I'm a curious sort, though Bun is much more inquisitive than I am. My intuitive long-eared pal is right quite often. That's why I listen when he speaks to me. Moments later, sirens blared, and a police cruiser slid to a halt not 15 feet away from us. A rescue vehicle parked, and 4 men scrambled over the snow, closing the distance between us. Sheriff Jack Carver gave me the once-over as he came abreast of me, Bun, and the deceased.
"When did you find the body?"
I slanted him a look, shut off my phone, and tucked it into my jacket pocket. "Just now. I walk every morning, but not usually here."
"Why come this way today?"
"I wanted to see if there was an ice buildup around the lake. It's quite beautiful. Without a dead man, that is." Carver gave our surroundings a sweeping look and shrugged.
"I guess beauty is in the eye of the beholder. All I see is frozen ground and a slippery road."
Bun popped his head out of the sling. He sniffed the air, twitched his ears, and settled against my chest. He might have a point. "I suppose you're right," I said, not speaking just to Carver, but also to Bun. We watched as paramedics pulled a sleigh-type basket over the snow-covered ground. They stood back until given the go-ahead to take pictures and do their job before collecting the dead guy for his ride to the morgue. Ice chips dropped off his face and clothing as the crew wrestled him into the sleigh. Once he was strapped in and tightly secured, the team took him away. All that was left on the ground where he'd lain was a dark patch of something I thought might be blood. The sheriff noted the spot at the same time I did, leaned forward, ripped one of the mashed stalks of grass from the ground, and held it to his nose. He bagged the grass and tucked it into his coat pocket. Who was this dead person, and what was he doing by the lake? Inwardly, I shivered at the thought of him dying in the cold, and then turned my attention to what the sheriff was saying. He waited for an answer to the question I hadn't heard, and then repeated it as he tipped his head in the dead man's direction.
"Are you familiar with him?"
"No, I don't recognize him. Do you?" I pointed to the dark spot. "Is that blood on the ground?"
"It doesn't concern you."
Bun moved around, then wiggled his head out of the sling again. He watched the sheriff with keen eyes. Jack gave Bun a glance, then offered me a cool attitude that surely meant he'd be asking the questions.
"You're certain you've never met him before? Maybe he stopped by the farm or you ran into him in town?"
"Not that I know of. If I did come across him somewhere, he didn't make an impression. Sorry, Jack." We walked from the beach onto the upper part of the road where his patrol car sat running.
"Do you always walk with the rabbit?"
I smiled a bit. "Every morning. It's good for us both." With a smirk, he nodded.
"If I think of anything else, I'll be in touch."
Jack tipped his hat-covered head and got into the cruiser. He drove off without a backward glance as I walked on while Bun chatted up a storm. "Why was he so insistent on you knowing that man? Do you know him? Has he been by the farm? Why didn't I see him if he did? Stop talking long enough for me to answer you. I have no idea why Jack thinks I've seen the guy. He hasn't been at the farm when I've been there, and that's why you aren't familiar with him." I heaved a sigh. "And by the way, we aren't going to get involved in the investigation, so get that idea out of your head right now." According to my Fitbit Surge watch, we'd reached the 3-mile mark.